Here's something the outdoor industry doesn't want you to think about. Every year, over 1,600 people go missing in American national forests and wilderness areas. That's documented. That's official. What's not official is how many of those cases make absolutely no sense. Experienced hikers vanishing on easy trails, bodies found miles from where they should be, with no explanation for how they got there, search dogs refusing to track, clothing removed and folded neatly beside people who died of hypothermia in warm weather. The government calls these anomalous disappearances. Researchers call them the missing 411, and people who actually live near these forests, they don't call them anything. Because where they come from, you don't talk about what happens in the woods after dark. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about a man who learned why. He went hiking in the Appalachian foothills, a simple trail, an afternoon trip. He came back, but barely. And what he found out there challenges everything we think we know about what's really happening in the American wilderness. Before I tell you this story, let me establish something. I'm not here to convince you that monsters are real. I'm not pushing any agenda. I'm simply going to share an account and documented facts that support patterns most people never hear about and let you decide. But I will say this up front. If you've ever gone hiking and felt watched, even though you were alone, this will resonate. If you've ever had that moment where the forest suddenly went quiet, completely quiet, and every instinct told you to leave, you'll understand exactly what this man experienced. And if you've ever ignored that feeling, this might be the story that makes you reconsider. The Appalachians are ancient. Not ancient like European castles, not ancient like Egyptian pyramids. The Appalachians are over 480 million years old. They're older than bones, older than dinosaurs, older than trees themselves. They were standing when life first crawled out of the ocean. And if you believe that places can hold memory, can absorb what happens on them over millions of years, then the Appalachians have absorbed more than any other mountain range in North America. The Cherokee knew this. The Shawnee knew this. Every indigenous nation that lived in these mountains passed down the same warnings. There are places you don't go. There are times you don't travel. And there are things you don't acknowledge, even if you see them. Modern hikers laugh at these stories. They pack their GPS devices and satellite phones and assume technology makes them safe. It doesn't. Just ask the man in this story. Actually, you can't. He doesn't talk about it anymore. But I will. Act 2. The story begins. Setup. The normal world. The hike was supposed to be easy. Just a lazy loop through the Appalachian foothills before dinner. Maybe 5 miles, mostly flat, the kind of trail you do when you want nature without effort. The man, let's call him Daniel, had started in late afternoon. He was experienced enough, had done dozens of trails across Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, never had a problem. He was chasing the kind of peace that only tall trees and empty trails can offer. That silence that feels like medicine after weeks of traffic and emails and artificial light. Leaves crunched under his boots. Birds called from unseen branches. The October air had that perfect crispness. Not cold enough for layers, not warm enough to sweat. For a while, the world felt harmless. That's the thing about the woods. They welcome you first. Daniel moved at an easy pace, took photos of the changing leaves, stopped to drink water by a small creek. Everything was exactly as it should be. But here's what he didn't notice. The trail markers had stopped about a mile back. The path he was following wasn't on any map. And the sun was dropping faster than it should have been. By the time he checked his phone, 2 things became immediately clear. No signal and battery at 12%. The blue GPS dot drifted uselessly across a gray void. No roads, no trail names, just empty digital darkness. Daniel looked around. The trail had thinned, split, then vanished entirely into a tangle of roots and shadow. He was lost. Now, getting lost in the woods isn't automatically dangerous. Experienced hikers know the protocol. Stay calm, retrace your steps, find high ground, wait for daylight if necessary. Daniel knew all of this, but the forest wasn't cooperating. The path he'd come from looked different now. The trees seemed closer together. Shadows fell at angles that didn't match the fading sun. And then there was the silence. It didn't come gradually. One moment birds were calling, squirrels were rustling through dead leaves, the normal soundtrack of the forest. The next moment, nothing. Not quiet, silence. The kind that has weight. The kind that feels like the woods itself is holding its breath. Daniel stopped walking. His ears strained for any sound. Wind, water, animals, anything. Nothing. Just his own breathing and his heartbeat, suddenly too loud in his chest. And that's when the stories crept back into his mind. The stories he'd heard around campfires as a kid. The stories his grandfather told about these mountains. The stories that Reddit threads and podcasts loved to share late at night. Skinwalkers. Voices that call your name from the darkness. Things that watch from the trees and wear people like masks. The Appalachian googly, that creature from old mountain lore that mimics loved ones to lure you deeper into the forest. Not deer. Animals that look like deer but move wrong, stand wrong, watch you with two intelligent eyes. Daniel laughed at himself, out loud, just to hear something. But the sound died too quickly in the woods, absorbed by the trees, like the forest itself swallowed it. That's when he heard something else. Chanting. Low, rhythmic, human, yet wrong. Let me stop here for a moment, because what Daniel experienced next isn't unique to him. The Appalachian Mountains have more documented cases of auditory anomalies than any other wilderness region in the continental United States. People report hearing voices, conversations, singing, chanting, sounds that shouldn't exist where no other humans are present. Park rangers have files on this. They don't publicize them, but they exist. In 1987, a search and rescue team in the Great Smoky Mountains documented something they couldn't explain. They were searching for a missing teenager, deep in the backcountry, miles from any trail. They heard the boy calling for help, clear as day, maybe 50 yards away. They followed the voice for 3 hours. It kept moving, always 50 yards ahead, always just out of sight. When dawn broke, they realized they had walked in a perfect circle, back to their starting point. The boy was never found. His case remains open. Here's another one. In 2003, a woman hiking alone in the Cherokee National Forest reported hearing her dead mother's voice calling to her from off-trail. The voice knew things, specific things, that only her mother would have known. She almost followed it. She didn't. She later said the only reason she survived was because her mother had once warned her, "If you ever hear my voice in the woods after I'm gone, run." The woman's case was documented by researchers studying anomalous experiences in wilderness settings. I share these because I want you to understand what Daniel heard wasn't imagination. Something exists in these mountains, something that uses sound, something that wants you to follow. Back to Daniel. The chanting continued, low, rhythmic, coming from somewhere downhill. And here's the thing about being lost in the dark. Every survival instinct tells you to move toward people. People mean safety. Campfires mean warmth. Voices mean rescue. So, despite every nerve telling him something was wrong, relief rushed through Daniel first. People meant help. Maybe a campsite. Maybe a group of hikers staying late. Someone with a working phone. Someone who knew the way out. He followed the sound downhill. Branches clawed at his jacket. Roots grabbed at his boots. The darkness thickened, but ahead, orange light flickered between the trees. A bonfire. He pushed through the last barrier of brush and stepped into a small clearing. And that's when relief died. 6 figures stood around the fire. They weren't wearing hiking gear, no backpacks, no trail shoes, no fleece jackets or camping equipment. They wore dark coats, long, heavy, the kind you'd see in old photographs, the kind that didn't belong in any century Daniel recognized. They swayed gently as they chanted, moving in unison like a single organism with 6 bodies. The language wasn't English, wasn't Spanish, wasn't anything Daniel had ever heard, but somehow, impossibly, he understood fragments, words that felt older than speech, concepts that his brain translated not into meaning, but into feeling. Return, blood, vessel, flesh of the forgotten. Around the fire, stones were arranged in careful patterns. Symbols were carved into them, not painted, carved, as if someone had spent hours or days preparing this site. The air smelled sharp, metallic, and underneath something else. Burned hair. Daniel should have run. He knows that now. Instead, he stepped forward into the light. "Hey, thank God, I'm lost!" The chanting stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Every head turned at once. Their faces looked human, but their eyes reflected the fire like animal eyes, that glow, that tapetum lucidum reflection that you only see in creatures built for the dark. One of them smiled, not kindly, with the satisfaction of someone who just found a missing piece. "You came on your own," a woman said softly. "That makes this easier." Before he could back away, they surrounded him. 6 people moving with practiced coordination. No hesitation, no communication needed, like they'd done this before, many times before. They spoke rapidly now, excited, words tumbling over each other. Daniel caught fragments. Genome failure, tissue rejection, ancient correction, what the labs couldn't do. Blood opens doors that technology cannot. One man laughed. Cloning was arrogance. Nature demands blood. Daniel fought. He kicked, screamed, landed an elbow hard into someone's jaw, felt teeth give way under the impact. But there were too many hands, too much practiced calm. They absorbed his resistance like they expected it, like it was part of the ritual. They dragged him to a stone slab near the fire, a slab he hadn't noticed before. Old, worn, stained with something dark that reflected the firelight. They bound his wrists with rope that smelled like it had been soaked in something organic, something that had once been alive. The chanting resumed, louder now, faster, building toward something. Panic flooded Daniel's chest, real panic, the kind that makes your vision narrow and your thoughts scatter. He was going to die here, in the middle of nowhere, and no one would ever find his body. One of the figures produced a blade. Not a knife, a blade. Curved, ancient-looking, made of something that wasn't quite metal. They raised it toward the sky, speaking words that made Daniel's ears ring. And then, something unexpected. "Wait," one of the men muttered. "Check the offering." The group paused. 2 of them moved toward Daniel's feet. They tore off his boot. The firelight revealed what they were looking for. Daniel's left foot, missing a toe, lost in a childhood accident, a lawnmower, and a moment of bad luck when he was 7. He barely thought about it anymore. But the cultists, they stared at it like they were seeing death itself. The circle went silent. "No," the woman whispered, "it has to be whole, unbroken." Her voice cracked with something Daniel didn't expect. Fear. I need to pause here, again, because what these cultists were attempting, it connects to something very real. In the early 2000s, there was serious scientific discussion about de-extinction, bringing back species that had died out, the woolly mammoth, the passenger pigeon, and yes, dinosaurs. The idea wasn't as crazy as it sounds. We've recovered DNA fragments from specimens frozen in permafrost. Cloning technology has advanced to the point where we've successfully cloned mammals. But here's what the documentaries don't tell you. The projects kept failing. Not because of funding, not because of technology, because something kept going wrong at the cellular level. Tissue rejection that shouldn't happen, genetic sequences that seemed to resist reconstruction, animals that would develop normally, then suddenly collapse, as if something was refusing to let them exist. Several prominent geneticists resigned from these projects without explanation. And here's what's interesting. At least 3 of them were later connected to fringe research communities, groups that believed the answer wasn't in the lab, groups that believed you needed something else to bring back what had been deliberately removed from this world, something older than science, something that required payment. I'm not saying what Daniel encountered was connected to these researchers, but the words he heard, what the labs couldn't do, nature demands blood, those aren't random cult ramblings. Those are the words of people who tried the modern way first and failed. Back to the clearing. The cultists stared at Daniel's missing toe. And then the ground trembled. Not an earthquake, not a natural vibration. Something beneath them was moving. The bonfire roared upward, flames twisting into impossible shapes, colors bleeding from orange to red to something that wasn't quite a color at all. A smell flooded the clearing, worse than rot, worse than death, the smell of something that had never been alive, not the way we understand alive. The symbols carved into the stones began to glow, then crack. "What did you do?" Daniel screamed at them. "What did you do?" But they weren't listening to him anymore. They were backing away from the fire, from something moving inside it. Something answered their call. A shape forced its way through the flames themselves, not around them, through them. It was massive. The firelight silhouetted it, tall, far taller than any human. Its head was wrong, elongated, horned. A goat-headed figure stepped forward, hooves striking the ground with sounds that didn't match their weight. Horns scraped sparks from the empty air. Eyes burned with something ancient. Not anger, not hunger. Awareness. The awareness of something that had been interrupted. Its voice wasn't loud, but it was everywhere. In the air, in the trees, in Daniel's skull. "You dare corrupt the right." The woman tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to bargain. She got 2 words out before she simply stopped. Not died, stopped, like someone had paused her existence. Then the others, one by one. Screams burst out, then cut short by something unseen. The fire collapsed inward with a violent roar. The forest shook as if reality itself were rejecting what stood in that circle. Shadows twisted through the smoke, fast and wrong, moving in directions that didn't exist. Daniel felt the bindings fall away from his wrists, not because the demon freed him, but because whatever judgment had come wasn't meant for him. He was imperfect, incomplete. He wasn't what they promised, so he wasn't part of the transaction. The last thing he saw before his mind shut down was the demon leaning close, breath hot against his skin. "You were never meant for this." Then, darkness. He woke up at dawn. Birds chirped, sunlight filtered gently through the trees. The October air had that same perfect crispness. The clearing was gone. Not abandoned. Gone. No fire, no stones, no bodies, no slab. Just dirt, leaves, and silence. Daniel staggered to his feet. His wrists were raw, his boot was still missing, and on his neck, 2 small punctures, already scabbed over, already healing in a way that shouldn't be possible. He didn't remember being bitten. He didn't remember anything between the darkness and waking up. 3 hours, maybe 4, gone from his memory like they never happened. No footprints led away from where he lay. No trail led back to where he'd come from. He walked until he found a road, then followed that road until he reached a ranger station. The rangers listened to his story. Then they went back with him. Search teams combed the area for 6 hours. They found no campsite, no ritual marks, no footprints but his own. Only one thing. A single, massive, 3-toed footprint pressed deep into the soil, facing out of the forest. Not human, not bear, not any known animal. The rangers photographed it, documented it, then never mentioned it again. Daniel doesn't hike anymore. He sold his gear, moved to a city, lives in an apartment building where he can hear his neighbors through the walls, and that sound, that proof of nearby humanity, helps him sleep. But some things haven't gone away. The puncture marks on his neck healed, but not completely. Faint scars remain, and sometimes, when the moon is full, they itch. Not painfully, just enough to remind him that he was there, that he saw something, that something saw him back. And here's the part that keeps him awake. Some rituals don't fail. They don't end when they're interrupted. They remember. And whatever those cultists were trying to bring back, whatever demanded the sacrifice of a whole offering, it wasn't stopped, just delayed. That 3-toed footprint faced out of the forest, toward civilization, toward the rest of us. So what do we take from this? Maybe nothing. Maybe it's just a story. But consider this. The Appalachian Mountains have been here for 480 million years. They've seen species rise and fall. They've absorbed more history than any human record could ever capture. Indigenous peoples lived in these mountains for over 15,000 years. They had rules, warnings, knowledge passed down through hundreds of generations, and every single tribe, without exception, said the same thing. There are places you don't go. There are things you don't wake up. Modern hikers walk those same trails with GPS devices and emergency beacons, assuming technology makes them safe. But technology doesn't negotiate with what lives in those mountains. Technology doesn't make you whole. And technology doesn't explain why over 1,600 people disappear in American wilderness areas every single year, with dozens of those cases defying every rational explanation. Daniel was lucky. He was incomplete, imperfect, not what was promised. So he was released. But the ritual remembered him anyway. And somewhere out there, in the ancient forests of Appalachia, something is still waiting, still watching, still hungry. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been hiking or camping and encountered something you couldn't explain? A place that felt wrong, a sound that shouldn't have existed? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you grew up in Appalachia, if your family passed down warnings about the mountains, I especially want to hear from you. Because I have a feeling Daniel's story isn't as rare as we'd like to believe.